Hi, I'm Gluten Morgen and today we're going to bake sourdough bread from scratch. But first of all, I need to check how is my starter. Is it explosive? Ooh. Wow! Ooh. I think it's ready to start baking bread. What do we need first? Flour. Strong flour, bread flour, maybe even all-purpose flour. And here I have some semolina, Italian semolina. If you don't have Italian semolina, you could use more flour, bread flour, or maybe whole wheat flour too. It's okay. What else do we need? Water. Water. Always water. This is a high hydration bread. I'm talking about 70% hydration, which is in 1 kilogram of flour, you have 700 grams of water. That's a lot of water. And these are the last two ingredients. Salt, which we'll be using in a few minutes, so I'll leave it there, and our sourdough starter. Always remember this, I will say it 1,000 times. You need the sourdough starter to be very, very active. If it's not active, don't start baking bread. Here in the channel you have a lot of videos on how to get your sourdough starter working perfectly, okay? So, let's start. It's very, very easy. So in this bowl I have the flour and I will add the semolina. Now I will add the sourdough starter. Remember, you can also see in the description of this video all the ingredients with grams. Sourdough starter and water. Remember, salt in a few minutes. I like to work in a bowl because it's much easier than working on the counter. It's also cleaner. And if you want to move around your house, you can do it. You see? It's very easy. Check this out. I am not kneading at all. I am just mixing all the ingredients. Not the salt, remember. Just mixing. No kneading. Why? Because I'll take advantage of the well-known or maybe not yet known autolysis. Wow, what's that? What's that? I don't know. What is autolysis? Autolysis was discovered by Ramon Calbel, a friend of mine from France. Now, he's a baker from France, and he developed this method in which you don't have to knead at all. You just mix water and flour, and the gluten will develop by itself. Just the only thing that you need is time. So we have plenty of time, right? So what we'll do is just this. Mix the ingredients, check if there's no more dry flour, and that's all. That's all the no kneading that we're doing, okay? So now begins the autolysis. I'll cover the bowl and leave it here on the counter for around 1 hour, maybe 2 hours, and you'll see the results. Okay, we have to wait an hour. No! Gluten has always prepared on behalf. And take a look now and see how our dough has changed. It is almost kneaded by itself. That's called autolysis. I'll wash my hands, just put a little bit of water on my hands, and look how the gluten has developed, and this dough is almost kneaded without the need of doing nothing, only waiting. Just it's about time. Take a look. That's very important. And if you at this point don't get this dough already kneaded and you are dealing with an uncontrollable dough, that's because your sourdough starter is too acid. So the way to keep it lower in acidity is to feed it regularly. Feed it and use it. And that way you'll make your sourdough starter better for baking bread. Okay, so we have our dough ready. What else do we need? Our last ingredient, remember the salt? Okay, so now I add the salt and I'll mix it again. Now it's very, very easy to do. This method is called rebound mixing or kneading, which is inside a bowl and doing like a hook with your hand, and I do this method called rebound. And see, it's almost kneaded. without doing anything, just waiting. That's the good thing when you don't have a standard mixer or maybe a bigger machine to help you. So we don't need anything else, just a bowl, a little bit of flour starter, and our arms and hands, okay? That's all. And that is all. Take a look at the dough. It's shiny, bold, and smooth, very smooth. So we're done with the kneading. What do we have to do now? We have to wait. It's almost about time and waiting when you bake sourdough bread. But at the end, you get a wonderful reward. Huge, beautiful, and super tasty sourdough bread. Now I'll cover it up again, and now we have to let it rise. It has to double its volume. This is called first fermentation or bulk fermentation, which is inside a bowl. And if we are doing the things right and the sourdough starter was very active, this would take us about like 4 hours, okay? So let's wait for it. But attention, in this bulk fermentation, if you want, this is optional, we can make some folding on the dough, which will help us making this gluten network even stronger. But when we should do this? On the first half of the bulk fermentation, because this dough will be full of air from the fermentation and we don't want to lose that air. So we have to do these foldings before the dough rises too much, okay? So I'll wet my hands to help not sticking with the dough, and I'll start doing this. The good part of working on a bowl is that I can divide it in 4 parts. Okay, so I'll take the first part and start stretching it the maximum I can without tearing it apart, okay? And I'll fold it on itself. Now I'll take the second part, stretch it and fold it. Now I'll take the third part and fold it. And last 4 part. So that's all, and this is a good way to even develop more the gluten network, and that will give us better results, okay? So I'll cover it again. Remember always to cover your dough. We don't want it to dry, so that's a way to keep it always humid. And now we have to wait, okay? See you in a few minutes. And thanks to the gluten video edition, we don't have to wait that much. See how the dough has risen. It is full of air, full of bubbles inside, and that is going to be our crumb. So we don't have to degas it, we don't have to press it, we just work with it very gently, okay? So here I have the dough, and what do I have to do? I need to put it on the counter. Just a semolina on the counter, a little bit on my hands. I could also use some oil, but I don't like that much. So, see how full of air? You should do this very carefully. Please don't degas this dough. We've been working hard to get this dough, so we don't want to degas it. Okay, here it comes. And voila! Our dough, our bread dough. So now what are we about to do? Now it's time to shape our bread. I'll be making a batard, which is this oval kind of bread, which is the best sandwich bread because you can get even loaves when you cut it, okay? So you can make an excellent sandwich with it, okay? So what do? I fold first this side into the center, and then I'll fold the second side on top of it, like this. This way we are giving tension to the dough, and it's almost beginning to look like a bread, right? And now that I have it this way, I need to roll it like a sushi roll, without degassing it too much. See how gently are my moves? And that's almost done. Ready. And look at all the bubbles that we have. This means that we have a very good fermentation. Now, what do I do with this? I will just pinch it like this and make like a stitch, okay? This way. Now do this on the other side. And this will help the bread to have a better shape and the gluten will be stronger. That's why. At last, we have to put some flour or semolina on top of it. This is going to be the crust of our bread. But to help it keep its shape, we'll be putting it in a baneton, which is like a bread form, you call it mold. It's like a bread mold or broad form, they also call it, or baneton in French. So I'll put some more semolina or flour in it and take a look at this. I'll flip it. I'll flip it like this and boom! This is the bottom of the bread and the crust or the future crust of the bread is now upside down. So slowly the bread will fill up all these banetons. And don't worry if you see it smaller. Don't worry, the bread will fill all this baneton. But how and when? Well, what Gluten Morgen recommends you is to make a long and cold fermentation. How? In your fridge. We'll take this bread, which is almost fermented, not yet ready to be baked, but maybe we could have done it in 2 hours, but I recommend you to take it into your fridge. Yes, overnight. 12 hours, 14 hours, even 24 hours, or even more. But don't worry. So, what are the benefits of long and cold fermentation? Well, first of all, it will be easier to handle the bread at the time of baking, and you'll get much more flavor out of your bread. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'll cover it up with this and I'll take it into my fridge. So I'll put it in the fridge at 5 centigrade degrees and I'll see you tomorrow. Good morning! With Gluten Morgen, you don't have to wait that much. So, we're on the next day, so it's time to bake. Here I have the bread that I brought from the cold fermentation from my fridge and see how it has grown slowly at night. And here I have already preheated my oven at 250 degrees. Here you'll see it at Fahrenheit too. My cast iron pan, which will help me to bake the bread inside of it. Why? Because all the water that's inside this bread dough will evaporate and help the dough to grow and to develop inside this cast iron pan, okay? Some more semolina as usual, so the bread doesn't stick on it. Some more semolina here on the bottom. Remember, this bread is upside down. And now I'll flip it. Ooh, wow. And take a look at it. Isn't it beautiful? So what else do I have to do? Now it will come the oven spring, in which the bread explodes and opens and makes that beautiful ear. So to help with that, I'll be using this lamb, which is like a razor blade, which is very, very sharpened and will help me to make this cut along the bread. So this, inside this cast iron, will open up and make, I hope so, a beautiful ear. So let's cover it and I'll take it to the oven. Here you go. Bye bye, may the gluten be with you, and I'll see you in 20 minutes. And it's time to open this cast iron now. Whoa! Wow! Good, yeah? Okay, but it's not yet finished. I still have to bake it and make it golden in more or less 24 minutes. Let's take it again into the oven. And there it goes for another 20-25 minutes, maybe 20. We'll check the color in the meantime. Okay, 20 more. And finally, here is our bread. This is very, very hot. That's why I use these gloves. And let's hear this. Ooh, whoa. Okay, I'll let it cool down and then we'll cut it. So here's the bread ready. It's already cool, so it's time to analyze it. Okay, here we see all these blisters, which are produced by the cold and long fermentations, and they are really beautiful. And we have this ear, which is very characteristic of this kind of breads because of the contrast of temperatures that we had. We took this bread out of the fridge at 5 degrees and then we baked it at a very high temperature. So This is the result of a very good fermentation. And here it is, the crust. Now it's time to open it and check out how is the crumb, okay? Wow, look at this beautiful and open crumb. Full of air, super light. Wow. Oof, and it smells super fresh. So now you know how to bake this kind of bread at home. So remember to like this video, share it, and of course subscribe to my channel. See you on the next video.